Well, I hope you're all doing well, and if not, things are about to get at least a little bit better. I've prepared a mysterious and creepy story for you with a hint of soy sauce. And yes, there's also a chance to earn 500,000 hotchevnias. Do not skip or leave the video. Watch closely but avoid looking at my squeezed pimple. Enjoy your meal. So, Japan, Tokyo, December 31st, 2000. That day, Ms. Haruko kept dialing the same number over and over again. She kept trying again and again to reach her daughter Yasuko. But you see, the call kept getting disconnected again and again. Yes, she assumed that maybe it was because New Year's was just around the corner. But she had a feeling deep inside that there was something more to it, that something wasn't right. Yes, in fact, that was true, but at that moment, the woman didn't know yet that the phone lines in her daughter's house, where she lived with her family, had been deliberately cut. This was no coincidence. Worried, Karuko thought, to hell with the phone, I'll go check what's going on myself, especially since it's New Year's again. She came to the house and rang the doorbell, but there was silence. Then the woman began shouting for her daughter. Yasuko, it's me, your mom. Again, silence. Fortunately, the woman had her key. You know, just in case, if it ever came in handy, she could use it. She wouldn't come into her daughter's apartment without permission. I guess that's the same, just in case. She opened the door a moment later. Well, everything was like in a fog. A bloody, eerie fog. At the stairs to the second floor lay Yasuko's whole husband, Mr. Mikio Miyazaba. You can see him in the photo now. At first glance, it was clear that he, let's say, hadn't just lain down to rest. After all, not only was he not breathing or moving, but he also had up to 100 stab wounds still bleeding. Karuko hurried to the second floor, hoping to find the rest of the family. But for obvious reasons, she was also afraid of this. And, well, for good reason. At the top of the stairs lay her daughter Yasuko, as well as her granddaughter Nina. Both of them were in pools of blood with dozens of wounds. The woman was confused. She didn't want to believe what she was seeing. She placed her hands on her loved ones, wanting to feel something. Their hearts beat, breathing weak. Something to show her they were alive, but they were already cold, and that wasn't all. Haruko went into her grandson Rei's bedroom. He seemed to be lying peacefully in his bed. There were no wounds on him, nothing like that. It seemed like he was just asleep. But he didn't respond to his name either. In fact, he didn't respond to anything at all. She called him, said something like, "Rei, wake up," but there was just nothing. She soon approached and saw he was also dead. Just to get a little ahead, I'll say that unlike the others, he wasn't stabbed, he was strangled. That's exactly how, in the midst of the New Year's celebration, Haruko suffered the worst. She lost her entire family. And the Japanese police began investigating, without exaggeration, one of the most mysterious and terrifying cases in their history. Which, moreover, is still full of secrets to this day. And Haruko, of course, was in shock. That's a huge understatement. Still, she quickly called the cops so they could start investigating. They arrived fast. They talked to the woman and started collecting evidence. And, my dear friends, there was, well, not just a lot, but a ton of it. Like, this definitely wasn't one of those cases where the killer even tried to cover his tracks. Basically, nothing at all. But let's go step by step. Near the body of the man, Mikio, they found a broken sashimi knife. Later, a fragment of that knife blade would be taken from Mikio's head. Interestingly, in the so-called huge hairy quotation marks, Yasuko and her daughter had several times more stab wounds found on their bodies. I mean, more than on Mikio, the husband. Moreover, some of those wounds were inflicted after the women, more precisely the woman and the girl, had already stopped breathing. That is, after their death. This implied the attacker had particular aggression toward the women. More precisely, again, toward the woman and the girl. But whether he had, let's say, problems in general with women or just with these particular ones is unknown. And spoiler, it's still unknown. As you remember, the boy's murder was different from the others. But why? Again, nobody knew. They only determined that he was strangled and most likely killed first. If so, what were the rest of the family doing? Were they threatened or unaware? There are so many questions. And that's just the beginning of these questions. There's also another fascinating detail. You see, the killer stayed at the crime scene for some time, from 2 to 10 hours. He didn't try to escape at all. He killed the whole family, then made himself at home. He used the computer, ate melon and ice cream, drank tea, even went to the bathroom, but apparently didn't figure out how to flush because he literally left a pile of his DNA. The biomaterial found in the toilet, let me put it this way, showed the police that the attacker had eaten green beans and sesame seeds the day before the murder. Did this help catch him? Keep watching to find out. That's just how much of a mama's little intriguer I am. Thanks for the likes and views, I appreciate each one. Wow, I sounded like a president. I'm not and never will be. They also found bloodied bandages among the evidence, and the blood belonged to the attacker again. He was probably injured in the fight with the man and chose to lick his wounds. He found a first aid kit in the house, used it, and just threw away what was left wherever. Relaxed, calm, he seemed to know for sure that he wouldn't get caught, or even if he did get caught, it seemed like he just didn't care. That's how it was. Can you imagine? They even say that after all that, he went upstairs, lay down on the couch, and took a nap for a while. So he really just didn't care. If you take those, criminal masterminds who don't even leave a single hair behind, this guy was on the opposite end of the spectrum. He left everything you could imagine. Overall, the place was a complete mess. The drawers and papers they had were turned upside down. Some of them were scattered in the bathroom. In that same bathroom, the killer left a bizarre mix of family belongings and trash, all soaked. Mikio's work receipts, some advertising flyers, school documents, as well as feminine hygiene products covered in blood. And all of that together in water. That's how it was. The cops thought the attacker was trying to destroy evidence, but eventually gave up and decided to get ice cream instead. Well, probably. Near the sofa in the living room, they found IDs sorted by name, as well as credit cards that belonged to the family members. However, the account money didn't disappear. That's not entirely true. Money plays a part, but we'll discuss that soon. Meanwhile, do you want to work in information technology? Generally anywhere, but here, specifically in information technology, you can take a free mini course in user experience, user interface design from GoIT here. It's made specifically for beginners. You don't need any knowledge or drawing skills. You can start this course knowing nothing. Mini course. Remember, it's free, no risk. Just try it. In 4 days, you'll learn what user experience, user interface design is. You'll create a mobile app design, and you'll also understand whether information technology is right for you or not. Maybe not, I don't know, but why not give it a try, especially since it's free. You don't pay anything, but the benefits are real. The link is in the description. Now, let's discuss whether the family was robbed. Yes, they were robbed, but it was 150,000 yen in cash, not from their accounts. Today, that's about 42,000 hryvnias in our currency, according to Google. Interestingly, this wasn't all the cash in the house. In fact, this guy, the killer, was sitting right where the rest of the cash was, in the office. We know this because he was sitting there, eating ice cream and using the computer, but he didn't take the money. Because of this, many believed robbery wasn't the main motive. Why didn't the killer take the valuables, or at least the money in the house? He left them untouched. He took 42,000 hryvnias. I pictured him with actual hryvnias in Tokyo in 2000 anyway. And then he just left. Oh, well, he also took Mikio's jacket, the man he killed. And you see, it seemed like there was a ton of evidence. It wasn't just a feeling. There was a lot of evidence, including an actual pile. But at the same time, all of it was too chaotic, too confusing. In the end, rather than helping solve the crime, all this only made things even more confusing. Or worse, it sent the investigation in the wrong direction. 25 years ago, surveillance cameras weren't installed everywhere, not even in Japan and not even in Tokyo. The cops had to rely on random witnesses, anyone passing by, driving through, hearing, or seeing something. Someone did hear and see something. Around 10 p.m., a man was seen walking behind the victim's house. Just some random passerby, so he said that while he was passing by, he heard an argument in the house. In the one where people were killed. You can see that same house in the photo now. If you can't see it, that's because you're looking at me. I'm checking if you're looking at the screen. If you're not, take a look. I'll show you the house now. Here it is. No, fooled you again. This is the house for sure. The witness said that what he heard wasn't exactly shouting, it was more like a very tense argument. About an hour and a half after that, the neighbor of the victims heard a loud bang. Investigators said this was when Mikio fell by the stairs. You remember that, right? The impact sound came from there, like something hitting the ground. Around the same time, people who lived nearby saw a man walking somewhere along the path next to the house. He was quiet, but moved quickly, as if fleeing someone or something. And again, around the same time, a taxi driver nearby picked up 3 men. One of those men was wounded, and the wound was pretty serious. Because it left bloodstains on the seat. But the taxi driver, it's not that he didn't notice it, but let's just say he decided not to pay attention to it. He was too afraid to ask questions. Who knew who those people were? Maybe Yakuza. Thankfully, they made it to their destination. You can judge him or not, but at least his behavior is understandable. There's also one important detail. Mikio Miyazawa repeatedly complained about the noisy behavior of skateboarders who rode near his house. Because yes, the family's house was right next to that skate park. You can see it in the photo now, can't see it, you will. Mikio even contacted local authorities. Skating, actually, right next to his house. They say that the man was generally very active in public matters concerning noise and order in the neighborhood. Could this have caused some resentment from the young people who were skating there? Of course it could. Why not? Especially... I haven't thought further. In general, the theory that the murder was some kind of act of revenge that got out of control is one of the main ones. This explains some of the clothes and items the criminal chose and left in the house. And by the way, he did leave them, I forgot to mention that. I mean, he also left personal belongings in the house, and quite a lot of them. Only he knows what that means. After all, on one hand, you might think that he left in a hurry and lost or left some things behind. But on the other hand, the guy was there for 10 hours. Well, okay, up to 10 hours. He spent time there, ate ice cream, slept in the bed, and so on. He used the bathroom, but probably wasn't in a rush. So why did he leave his things? It's unclear. They grabbed their phones and quickly checked the screen. So, as you can see, among the criminals' belongings there were Slazenger sneakers, among other things. Slazenger, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, which by the way were not sold in Japan at that time. Also, there was a Raglan t-shirt, sorry about my English, and an AirTech jacket, sorry again. And you see, all of these were super popular items among skateboarders at that time, at least in Japan. I can't speak for everyone, I'm not much of a skater myself. Lately, I'm more into wasabi. Wee-ee-ee, choo-choo-choo ollie, damn, that's spicy. The wasabi is actually pretty good. Sometimes, sushi comes with it, and it's perfect. It's not spicy at all, but this one is spicy. I just got it at the supermarket. This isn't a sushi ad. Damn. At the crime scene, the police also found grip tape. It's a thing you put on a board to get good traction with your shoes. But the highlight of these findings was the killer's bag. I mean, yeah, he even left his bag with his stuff there. Experts found grains of sand in it, and not just any sand, but Californian sand. There was also fluorescent marker handkerchiefs and Drakkar Noir perfume in the bag. They were popular with American skaters in the 80s. Investigators said this suggests a man aged 15 to 35, since 35 is still considered young. Possibly not of Japanese origin, considering there were quite a lot of imported items there. If we accept the theory about skaters' involvement, the investigation suggests it was likely an act of revenge. Maybe it was an emotional outburst after a conflict with Mikio. Perhaps some teenagers were skating and Mikio came out to scold them. I'm not sure what kind of person he was. Maybe he acted rudely, maybe not. There was a conflict, and these young people, ages 15 to 35, began holding a grudge against Mikio. They came, decided to punish him, but something went wrong, or maybe it went exactly the way they wanted. I can't say that. If the attacker is really between 15 and 35 years old, then that could basically explain part of his behavior. Especially if he's closer to 15. Impulsive, carefree, a guy unaware of his actions' consequences. The police tried to track the stores where all that skate stuff was bought, but as expected, nothing worked out. Thousands of similar markers, tapes, sneakers, and more were sold in Japan a year before the crime. And the number of people who bought them is just astronomical. Well, at least way too big to find that one specific person. As you may recall, and if you don't, I'll remind you now, the killer left behind a huge amount of DNA at the crime scene. They examined that pile and concluded that the killer is of mixed race. Well, they didn't figure it out just by looking, obviously, but through the DNA. The father was of East Asian descent, and the mother was from Southern Europe. The DNA contained characteristic Asian and European components, blood type A. They also estimated the attacker's height and physical features. 175, 177 cm, right-footed, shoe size about 43. All of this is very good and there is plenty of evidence. They gave nothing overall. Who is it? Where is he? It wasn't clear. They even found a bunch of fingerprints there. There really were a lot, again, but did they help in any way? No, because those fingerprints weren't in Japan's databases. running around all the skate parks, checking everyone's fingerprints to see if they match these specific ones. No one would do that. Actually, they even tried checking skateboarders, but again, there are just too many of them. It's not even certain that this guy, the killer, even lived in Japan at all. Maybe he just came there for a while and then went off to another country. Maybe he did live in Japan, but in some other area. In short, it's complicated. Basically, all the available information only helped to come up with theories and versions. That's it. The first theory was robbery, explaining the break-in, search for money, and scattered belongings. But this theory couldn't explain why everyone was killed, except for the youngest members of the family. Why? Why did the killer stay in the house for so long and act like it was his own home? Generally, that's not how someone who came just to rob behaves. On the contrary, they should escape and disappear as quickly as possible. But here, it's like they killed the whole family, took some valuables, more precisely money, and stayed at the crime scene for a long time. This makes you seriously doubt that robbery was the main motive for the murder. Maybe that was part of it again, but robbery definitely wasn't the main reason. There was something deeper. The second version is the one that's discussed the most and the one we already mentioned earlier. The Skateboarder's Revenge. Sounds like a movie title, The Skateboarder's Revenge. It combines local conflicts with deep social problems as well as youth isolation, lack of control, and emotional instability. The clothes and things found in the house seem to scream, "People, you should look for the killer only at skate parks, nowhere else." But, as I said, that's what they did basically for a while, but checking all the skateboarders across Japan, and maybe even beyond Japan, well, that's just unrealistic. The third theory is quite interesting and somewhat unusual. You see, it's about a kind of secret criminal connected to the United States military base. Imagine the sand found in the criminal's bag wasn't just from California, but specifically matched sand from a United States Air Force base there. Specifically Edwards Air Force Base. With imported items and mixed origins, it's quite possible. But again, there is no direct evidence linking any person from the United States military base to this murder. Only sand in the bag. Even though there are some rather weak points, the military base theory remains one of the most intriguing. Especially if you imagine some military skateboarder who came to Japan to kill Japanese people. Nonsense? Yes. We live in a world where anything is possible. Seriously though, a lot of things are actually possible that we, let's say, don't expect. And regarding the subversion with the mental disorder, there's something to say here. It really does have its strengths. It at least explains the odd behavior after the crime, the lack of cover-up, and the emotional detachment. Plus, it doesn't provide a clear motive. That is, in principle, there might not even be a motive at all if it's really some kind of disorder. This became one of Japan's largest and most complex investigations. Just think about it, over 280,000 investigators took part and gathered more than 12,000 pieces of evidence during the entire period. But this is still an example of how even the most thorough, the largest scale investigation can reach a dead end. If the criminal acts outside the system, and of course, when the police make critical mistakes, how could it be otherwise? At the very least, the chance was lost to identify suspicious individuals who sought medical help for stab wounds during those days. After the murder, remember the taxi driver who picked up those guys? One of them had a wound. Well, they just ignored that story, because everyone was focused on the skateboarders and on mentally unstable people. The investigation focused on the theory of a mentally unstable Japanese man for a long time, ignoring other options. Moreover, there was weak coordination between different departments, which led to, let's say, the information being scattered overall. Accordingly, the killer of 4 people still hasn't been caught or even identified. It's been a quarter of a century already, by the way. As of today, all the case materials remain under strict control. And for information leading to the arrest of the killer, a reward of 20 million yen is still being offered. That's over 5.5 million hryvnias. Purely theoretically, if you ever manage to solve this crime, meaning find the killer, then yes, you would earn 5.5 million hryvnias. This isn't a joke. Is it possible? Well, it's a task with a star and another star under that star, but overall, yes, it's possible. You never know what the devil will joke about. He loves jokes, but I don't. Never laugh. Just kidding. Seriously though, let's brainstorm some theories now. Who could it have been? Why did he do it? Where is he now? If, of course, you have any theories, you can also Google it. I'll leave a link or a couple of links where you can read about this case. That's all for today, dear ones. Thanks for watching, see you in the next video. Be sure to check out these ones too.